Hi everyone. In the previous video, we see that how we can integrate Flask security into our application, and also in the very first video, we see how to create APIs, and we took an approach where we were using routes which are provided to us by Flask. In today's video, we'll see an alternate way on how we can create APIs using one of the libraries which is being provided to us, which is Flask RESTful. So the advantage of using Flask RESTful when we're creating APIs is the code would look more Pythonic. It would be simpler and it would be faster way of creating the API. It would be more structured, right? When we are creating when we're using the routes approach where we are creating the APIs, it is hard to manage club the APIs which are responsible for a specific application. For example, let's say that we want to perform an operation on categories, so CRUD operations on the categories. So we would be having multiple routes, one for creating a product, another for reading or retrieving all the information about a particular product, or updating a particular product. So all these things, right, they would be having different routes. But when we are using Flask RESTful, we can club everything in one particular class, and we can define various multiple functions. So we'll see how we do that. So for that, let's start the code. Yeah, so what we will do now is first we need to install the Flask RESTful into our system. So let's do that. I will say pip install Flask RESTful. In the meantime, it gets installed. We will start with it. So now let's first try to import from let's import from Flask RESTful. We will import API, right? And we need to tell our application, the Flask application, that I'm working in the context of this particular app. So what I have to do is I have to initialize my API which I'm gonna create, and then what I will do is I will call API, and I'll tell this particular class which I've imported from the Flask RESTful that I'm working in the context of app, right? After doing this thing, and I can add, so in terms of Flask RESTful, the APIs which we call are generally called as resources. So what we do is we create resources, and then we tell, okay, this particular resource is accessible at this particular endpoint. So in terms of Flask RESTful, the APIs are generally termed as resources. So for that, in order to create resources now, what we will do is we will, from the Flask RESTful, we will also import resource, resource, yeah, and we can use this resource to create APIs. For example, if you remember, in the very first video we created two APIs. So one was perform the addition, so and another was then creating a hello world, right? So let's first look at how do we create an hello world resource in the Flask RESTful context. So what we will do is, let's first say class hello world, resource, and so now when we are defining these classes inside the class, let's say that I want to accept an API request, I want to accept an GET request, or I want to do a POST request. So I can define various get, like for all right. So this is how a resource in Flask RESTful looks like. So what we do is, whatever class we are creating, we inherit the resource class from the Flask RESTful. It will ensure that whatever APIs are we are creating whatever the boilerplate is needed for that is being taken care by this particular class, which is resource. And then we can define various functions with the HTTP method request, like if we want to receive and get request and we want to implement what all happens, the logic for the get request then we can implement inside the function called as and get. Similarly for the post and the delete. So let's say that we want to create and get request which just returns hello world, and that's the objective for us right now. So what we will do, we can just let's say that the data which we want to return right now is simple, that with the message with hello world, right? And then I can just from the Flask I can import something called as an make response and JSONify. Alright, so now I can create a response by just saying return and I will create a response, and with it would be very similar to what we have done in first video. It's just that we are following a different approach. So JSONify, and we send the data, and also we also send the status code. Let's say that the status code we want to send for this is 100 201, right? And so we have received one API request. Right now we have not done the implementation for the post request for this resource, but we'll see how do we that. But for now, and once we have created this particular resource, and then we can tell our application that okay, this particular resource is being served at which particular endpoint. So in order to do that, what we do, we declare like API dot add resource, so the API class which we have created over here, right? And we have also told okay, this particular API is being working in the context of this particular app which is hosted here in the Flask, right? So what we'll do, we will say API add resource, and then we'll give the name of the class over here. The first argument to this particular function would be the class which we have created, and let's say, and the second part is we can define okay, at which endpoint which I want to serve this particular thing. So let's say this is at the home page right now which we are serving this particular file, right? And let's save the file and run this particular thing. Pip install, oh sorry, it should be Python and Flask RESTful.py. I think there would be some errors because the file name and the over here the Flask RESTful, the file name which we have created and the library which we are using, we have given the same name. So there might be possibilities that the error might come, so it's better to be on the safer side. Let's change the name first. Yep, we have done that, and we this code is inside that yeah. And now I hope we shouldn't get any errors. Let me also use the renamed thing over here, and it says that we don't have any file. Did I make a spelling error? Flask RESTful underscore tut.py. Oh, there is a spelling error over here. Let's correct the spelling error, and which is Flask RESTful. So once the spelling error has been resolved and we have been serving the file, we can test the APIs the way we have done in our first video itself. So if we go and just use Thunder client, and we can send a new request. Okay, and then when we send it, send a request. Whatever message which we wanted to send has been served, and also you can see the get request has been served. Now similarly, if I want to write the implementation for the post, but when I'm doing the post, I'm accepting the data in the form of JSON object, right? The exercise would be very similar. So when you were importing from the Flask, you used a request, right? Similarly, we can use request to get the data from the body. So let's say that the data which wanted to, so let's call it as in credentials. And so in the API request which we are creating over here, this time when I'm sending a post request, when I will send a post request, in my body I will have a data which looks like this. It will have a name, or let's call it as a user name, right? And the username is, let's say, Rohit Kumar. And the second thing is, let's say, my other information, let's say that my address, and the address may be Krishna Hostel, right? And this is how the data which I would be sending from the my request in the body. So when I'm defining this post request, the request which I will receive here at this particular point, I have to get the data like we have done. So what we will do is, we will say request dot get JSON, and once we have the data, we can either do whatever we want to do. For now, we are having a global store for now. That is, we are using just as a list, and this is our we are considering this list as our database for now, because it would be in RAM, and it is stored in a RAM itself. It is not persistent. It is not stored somewhere in a hard disk. Whenever we are running this particular program and we're not stopping it, this user detail would be accessible to us. So that's the idea of in-memory database. You can consider user detail, the list which we have written, as an in-memory database. So now whenever I want to put some information over here, I can just keep putting the details into this particular list whenever I receive a request. So what I will do, so I have received the credentials. I can do some sort of data validation over here, which will ensure that the body which I am receiving from my request follow some structure. That is, I just want to have user name and address. These two fields should be there in my body request which I am sending. So I will do that if user and name. That's how I have defined username over here, right? Yeah, and username is there. If this is not there in the credentials which I am getting, or the password which not the password, the address is not there in the credentials, I'm creating, what I'm doing is I'm creating again a response with just some information saying that the data is invalid, and sending that data back. Otherwise, that is, so I have changed the status code. If you see, earlier I was sending the status code as 201, and this was the status code which was visible. But let's say that we are sending a 404 error, which is something was wrong, and we are sending the message as invalid data. If the body is not how I want in my request, if all this sort of data validation which you want to do has been done, we can add the information into our database dot append, and it can be added to the credentials. The credentials can be added to this particular list which we have created. And yeah, and then what we can do is, when we are making a response, we can just simply say return make response, and we can just simply say JSON. Okay, let's make a response a little extensive, or so let's call a result which we are creating as a dictionary, and for that first we will be sending a message, and that is user has been added successfully. Second thing which we want to do is which user we have created, so we can just simply say user, and then we can also pass some this information. This is how I'm telling that okay, I have successfully added this particular user with this credentials, and this is the information which I want to send. You can see over here that the result which I'm sending on the post is a list, like it's a nested dictionary, and even nested dictionaries can be sent via the response, or also we can send a list of dictionaries. So when I'm sending this data, I would say JSONify, and I will again return something called as JSONify result 201, right? And if I save the file, and if earlier I sent a get request to this particular endpoint, and I was able to get an hello world, the first API which I created with the Flask RESTful, which was hello world. The second API which I'm gonna create as post request, when I'm adding this information into the database or the temporary database which we have created. So for that, let's send the request, and see, user has successfully been created, and that's visible over here, right? So the next thing which we will do is let's modify this particular get request here. That is I'll comment this out so that the code is visible to you, but everyone. But what we will do here now is, instead of just sending the hello world, I'm just want to access whatever is in this user detail. Whenever I hit a get request to this particular resource, I'm sending everything, that whatever data I have regarding the users which has been stored in the user details database, I would be sending everything, and I want to create that. And so what I will do, the thing is, let's say that I accept an username, and that is let's say that I accept a username from the URL. So the first thing is, I have created one URL over here. The second, if I want to add multiple URLs which accepts which has a different syntax, for example, if I'm accepting a different URL which is like this, string username, right? Or let's call it as an API slash string username, and similarly we can call this as in slash API. Yeah. Let's correct this. Yeah, this is how we have created. And right now I just changed the endpoint. Right now, earlier it was just the slash, right? But now I have changed the endpoint to slash API. So if you see over here, I can just hit slash API, and then I can work around with this. So, and the second point is, I am now accepting some data in form of in the endpoint itself, which is I'm sending in username, and I just want to retrieve the information of that user. And this username can be so we have this argument which we are sending over here, the username. It would be acceptable over here, and we have passed the argument for that, and then we can use this username. So we can just do is, let's create an what we can do is, let's say that for user in user details, if we get the username as whatever we have received, right, we will send that user detail to the backend, to the client. Otherwise we will make that, we'll say that we didn't find the user. So this is the get request which we have created. Sometimes well, let's test this first. And we have restarted the server, and let's say the user which we have created was Rohit Kumar, and this is the endpoint change which I have made over here. And let's I'm sending a get request now. Hopefully I should get this user detail which I have added before. I should get that. So let's send it, and it says that it did not find any user. Let's try to add first. Maybe when I restarted the server, in-memory database got away. So let's add, we have added this user. Let's also add another user called as user1 and something over here and add. So we have added these two users. Now let's first access to test the API, get API. We will send to this particular endpoint and let's send it, and we are receiving it. Let's also get the user1, right? Get the information for the user1. We are getting that. If I want to get the list of all the users, how can I do that? So the API which I have created, let's say that we give the default value to this particular thing as none, right? And what we say is, if user is none, username is none, and if it is run, we will return, this is the conditions which I have made over here. I am returning every, so you see the user detail, I'm returning everything. Let's test this thing now, how this works. So if I go over here and in my endpoint, if I don't pass any username, this is the point which I'm hitting over here, and I'm sending a get request with this. So I send it. At first it says that user not found. Okay, again the user got deleted when I restarted my system, right? So let's send it. I've added one user. Let me add another user now. We have added two users, and I want to get everything, information about all the users which are available in my database. So what I will do is I will send the request, and you can see I'm getting a list of dictionaries, and I have both the users which have been added successfully. So this is how I'm working with the Flask RESTful, which is I have a class wrapper which is hello world, and inside that I'm defined the what is the functionality. If I receive a get request, what happens if I send a post request, what happens if I send a delete request, right? So this is, we have completely understood this part. Now there is interesting thing is like we used to send some data with the within the URL of the API endpoint, right? Like this. So and if we have a function which accepts an argument and there's some function which does not accept an argument, for example in this case the post is not accepting any argument, whereas in get it may or may not accept the argument. So that's why we have defined two endpoints for the same route or the same resource. So this is how we can create and use Flask RESTful. So here we will stop. I hope you have understood how you can create APIs in the Flask RESTful, and you can build up on whatever I have information which I have given to you guys here. In the next video, let's create an API for the login, logout and register using Flask where we would be using Flask. We would be having in Flask, we would be using Flask SQL Alchemy to have the database, the actual database, and we also would be we have learned how to integrate the Flask security. So in the next video we would be working combinedly with the Flask SQL Alchemy, Flask RESTful and the Flask. So these three libraries we would be working combinedly, and we would be creating three APIs. One would be for login, another would be for the logout and register. And these three APIs we would be to ensure that how you can perform addition of your data. Like we have learned also that how we can add the data into the database when when you are using Flask security. So similarly it will combine all this whatever we have learned in these 2-3 videos which we have seen before this, and we'll combine everything and we'll create these three APIs. See you in the next video. Till then, have a nice day. If you like the video, you can comment down. If you have any suggestions for us, you can please, would be happy to read your comments or your suggestions. Please write down that in the comment box. See you. Do subscribe us. Yeah.